sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. I love step 11, and not just because I love praying and meditating, but because I think in the step there's so much to reflect on. When I look at the wording of step 11, it's clear that the authors were suggesting that it requires working at it. The words sought and improve indicate that it requires work. I'm a big fan of Carl Jung, and he said, "The serious problems in life are never fully solved. If ever they should appear to be, it is a sure sign that something has been lost. The meaning and purpose of a problem seems to lie not in its solution, but in our working at it incessantly." And I think that can be applied to our prayer and meditation life. Our problems, as in getting to know ourselves and becoming increasingly better people, are never fully solved, nor is understanding God's will for us. The 12 by 12 has lots of good insights. It says that we in the program are busy people working on ourselves and helping others. And then it says, so it isn't surprising that we often tend to slight serious prayer as something not really necessary. So why then do we pray? Again, reading from the 12 by 12, to be sure it is something that might help us meet the occasional emergency. But at first, many of us are apt to regard it as something of a mysterious skill of priests and pastors from which we might hope to get a second-hand benefit. It goes on to say, many of us had a strong logic too, which proved there was no God whatsoever. What about all the accidents, sickness, cruelty, and injustice in the world? Surely there could be no justice in this scheme of things, and therefore no God. And when I hear statements like that, I don't hear logic. The presence of bad things in the world does not disprove the existence of God. I think if people are looking for an excuse not to believe, they will find it. We have free will, and most of the evil in the world is man's inhumanity to man. Instead of disproving God's existence, it proves our woundedness and our frailty and our need for a higher power, for direction. Because left to my own devices and without guidance, I don't know about you, but I tend to start backsliding pretty quickly. The 12 by 12 goes on to say, we liked AA well enough, and we are quick to say it had done miracles and that so many people had talked how their higher power was changing their lives. But we recoil from meditation and prayer as obstinately as the scientist who refused to perform a certain experiment, lest it proved his pet theory wrong. Like science, all the AA program asks is that you experiment, to trust in the stories of those who have been open-minded and who diligently work step 11. Just look around the meeting rooms. Talk to those who trust in their higher power and do some of your own research. You'll find your answer. When I come across people who, for whatever reason, struggle with the notion of a higher power, if there seems to be no common ground on which we can start to build on the importance of finding one, I often say to them, show me a downside to believing. And at the end of the day, a refusal to try something new, which has worked for millions of people, is all about self-will and ego. And I don't know about you, but self-will and ego are usually what gets me into messes. Many times when people come to me for advice or counseling, I ask them about their relationship with God. Most often they have some belief in a higher power, But then I get to the tough questions and I ask them about their prayer and meditation life. And then they start to get a little dodgy. Eventually it comes out. Their definition of regular is usually different than mine. And when they finally get honest, their step 11 work is a little less than conscious. So just like with the concept of a higher power, tell me, what is the downside to prayer and meditation? Why do we resist prayer, or why is it that we only use half measures? Praying occasionally or praying only when we need help? Is it that we don't want to let go of our old ideas, or that we haven't really turned our will and life over to God? I suggest that if we're struggling with our prayer life, we might need to go all the way back to step 3 and ask ourselves if we are really turning our will and our lives over. Sure, prayer and meditation takes a bit of time, but so did drinking and doing drugs and being wasted and hungover. And so now that we're not doing that, surely we can find a little time for something that research shows will change our lives. We were ready to commit hours every day to our addiction, so half an hour a day to something with such amazing power is probably a good investment. Step 11 says we're supposed to improve our conscious contact with God. Well, what does that mean? Let's look first at what it doesn't mean. It doesn't mean unconscious. For me, praying unconsciously is when I rattle off the Serenity Prayer or the Lord's Prayer to salve my conscience about praying. It's kind of like my get-out-of-jail-free card. I can say those 2 prayers in my head in about 30 seconds, but there's nothing really conscious about it. I just do it to ease my guilt about not working on my relationship with God. Has anybody in here ever had a friend that only called when they had a problem? When they needed something or when they needed to unload on you? Anybody but me? William has. A few of us have. And then they hang up the phone before you've had a chance to say anything about what's happened in your life. It isn't really a friendship. It isn't a relationship. No, it's all one-sided. There's no two-way communication. So as an example, Pete's my sponsor and my best friend, and I like to think that it's a co-sponsorship type of thing and that maybe I'm his best friend. And if we talked every day and all that Pete did was dump on me and rant and rave about everything, now that happens the odd time. Those of you in drug court know that Pete likes to rant every now and then. But if that's all he did, there's no relationship there. And I think that God probably gets millions of those phone calls every day where somebody just dumps on him, just complains, and really doesn't establish a relationship, doesn't stop to listen for what it is that God has to say on the other end of the phone. So I try to do things to make my simple prayers a little bit more conscious for me. Let's use the Lord's Prayer as an example. Now, I, like many of you, have said this prayer thousands of times, and we say it here every Sunday at the end of the service. Trying to make it a little more conscious for me, I think of the potential meanings of its various parts. This is the prayer that Jesus taught to his disciples as a good way to pray. So I think there's some significance to it. And I remember years ago, Ron Voth, I see him sitting over there, we did a book study on cancer and the Lord's Prayer. It was a deeply meaningful study that we did, and that book broke everything down. And I'm stealing a little bit from that book tonight. By thinking about it and meaning it as I say it, I slow down and think about why Jesus taught this particular prayer. This helps me to be more conscious, to be more deliberate, and to be improving my conscious contact. So here are some examples. These are just things that I've come up with. Our Father reminds me of the relationship nature. It makes it personal, and it forms a connection. And it reminds me of the unconditional love that a parent can have for a child. Who art in heaven reminds me of the distance and greatness of God's power and the greatness of his thinking compared to ours. It enlarges God's nature, and by thinking of how large and great he is, I find that I tend to trust more. Hallowed be thy name. Hallowed is typically thought of as meaning holy or to be revered, and that's true. But this word comes from a Greek word which also means healing. So it reminds us not only of God's holiness, but of his healing power. So you might want to think, healing be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven, reminds us of the coming of God's kingdom and that we are to do his will and not ours. And I think if we were to keep all this in focus, the world could be a better place. Give us this day our daily bread. I love this line. It's one of the cornerstones of our program. This line teaches us to live one day at a time, trusting that we can make it through this 24 hours. For me, it also has a much deeper meaning. A reminder of Jesus' body broken for us, just as we talked about last month when we did communion and every time that we do communion. Jesus took the bread and he broke it and he said, "This is my body broken for you." And I am reminded that my daily bread lies in the sacrifice that he made for me. And forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. This line tells us that as we forgive, so shall we be forgiven. This is shown to us in our program in the act of letting go of our resentments. Remember that this is the only line of the Lord's Prayer that Jesus explained to his disciples. That should tell us something about the importance of forgiveness. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Now this is a strange line, but I think it's maybe lost a little bit in translation. The original version of the Lord's Prayer said, "Do not subject us to the final test." And remember, even Jesus prayed for this in the Garden of Gethsemane when he prayed, "Take this cup from me." But then he added, "If it be thy will." So it may be asking for the strength to face our final trial or to face the trials of today, which God promises to do. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever and ever, reminds us of God's omnipotence and that there is a plan that is greater than anything that you or I can conceive. So when I think about these things and the other possible meanings to this simple yet deep prayer, it keeps me working on my conscious contact with God, not just praying because somebody told me to. You can do something in a similar way with any of the usual prayers, which we pray frequently, to become more conscious in your prayer life. I find that when I make up my own prayers, I'm usually conscious of what I'm praying, but when I use the same ones over and over, I tend to get a little bit routine and it becomes far from conscious. The 12 by 12 also tells us to be conscious as it offers up the step 11 prayer, the prayer of St. Francis, which goes like this. I'm going to repeat what Pete was saying when he did the third step prayer with us. Lord, make me a channel of thy peace, that where there is hatred I may bring love, where there is wrong I may bring the spirit of forgiveness, that where there is discord I may bring harmony, that where there is error I may bring truth, that where there is doubt I may bring faith, that where there is despair I may bring hope, that where there are shadows I may bring light, that where there is sadness I may bring joy, Lord, grant that I may seek rather to comfort than to be comforted, to understand than to be understood, to love than to be loved. For it is by self-forgetting that one finds, it is by forgiving that one is forgiven. It is by dying that one awakens to eternal life. The 12 by 12 says, as beginners, we might now reread this passage several times very slowly, savoring every word and trying to take in the deep meaning of each phrase. It will help if we can drop all resistance. Debate has no place. We rest quietly with the thoughts of someone who knows, so that we may experience and learn. The 12 by 12 is telling us to stop fighting and to be conscious, so that we might get the gifts that come from prayer and meditation. My title tonight is Fit for a King. It struck me that if prayer was important enough for the King of Israel, it might be worth considering. So I did a little research about some famous people that you might know who think prayer is an important part of their life, and some say it's the most important. Do you have the Denzel Washington slide there? I love this. This comes from a talk that Denzel did to a group of acting students. And partway through this, you can find it on YouTube. Denzel says, I pray that you all put your shoes way under your bed at night, so you got to get on your knees in the morning to find them. And while you're down there, thank God for grace and mercy and understanding. We all fall short of the glory of God. We all got plenty. And he goes on to say, we all got to pray. If you just start thinking of all the things you've got to say thank you for, that's a day. That's easily a day, right? So I was doing a little bit of research, and I came up with a few other names that you might recognize, people who said that prayer is an extremely important part of their life. Carrie Underwood, Mark Wahlberg, who said it's the most important thing in his life, Polly Perrette, Faith Hill, Beyonce, Patricia Heaton, Angela Bassett, Tyler Perry, Matthew McConaughey. Mr. T says, I pity the fool who doesn't believe in God. Tim Tebow, Reba McEntire, Stephen Colbert, Chris Cameron, Kevin James, Garth Brooks. I think if it's important enough for the King of Israel and for stars like that, that maybe it's important enough for me to consider too. In the Bible, King David was no stranger to prayer and the importance of it. He also knew from experience that he didn't get everything that he prayed for. Many of his prayers went unanswered, or what happened was completely different than what he prayed for. But he trusted God and God's plans, and he knew that they were far greater than his and greater than he could understand. In Psalm 27, David wrote of the joy he found in improving his conscious contact with God. Most of us start our praying to have God free us from our addictions and to take away our difficulties. But as our spiritual journey continues and deepens, we find that we want to build our relationship because, like King David, we find joy in it. As we look at David's words, we can't help to see his love for God, his trust and his desire to be in relationship, to improve his conscious contact. Do you have the scripture there for me? This is from Psalm 27, verses 4 to 16. The one thing I ask of the Lord, the thing I seek most, is to live in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, delighting in the Lord's perfection and meditating in his temple. King David says, the thing I seek the most. This is the King of Israel. Think about that. He wants nothing more than to have a relationship with God, meditating and improving his conscious contact. For he will conceal me there when troubles come. He will hide me in his sanctuary. He will place me out of reach on a high rock. Then I will hold my head high above my enemies who surround me. Again, he trusts that God will protect him as he will you and me, no matter what. At his sanctuary, I'll offer sacrifices with shouts of joy, singing and praising the Lord with music. King David talks of holding his head high, just like you and I can in sobriety, and if we're following the principles of the 12 steps. This is such an amazing and uplifting psalm. I encourage you to all read it, the whole thing. David found great joy in improving his conscious contact with God. It was the thing that he wanted the most. Now, I mentioned a few minutes ago about how if we do some personal research and talk with people who are getting the whole Step 11 thing, that we might be willing to try it. It seems to work for lots of people, and it worked for King David. Maybe there's something to it. So why, if peace, contentment, self-esteem, a better life is all that we desire, and research and observation shows us that Step 11 is the magic pill, why do we not practice it every day? Or if we do, why do we only spend a few minutes on it? I don't have the answer to that question. It's one to ask yourself.